$87,000 gone. That's what Garrett Hayes thought the moment his truck rolled up the winding gravel road and he spotted a strange SUV parked in front of what was supposed to be his newly purchased mountain cabin. But that wasn't the worst of it. Standing on the porch was a furious-looking blonde woman, shotgun in hand, shouting like she'd been waiting for a fight. "Get off my land before I call the police!" She screamed, eyes blazing. Garrett froze. The smell of fresh paint drifted through the open windows, paint he'd never authorized. The scent of someone else's dinner cooking inside his kitchen mixed with the bite of cold mountain air. New curtains hung in the windows. Not his, not from any store he'd been to, and yet there she was, acting like she owned the place. Garrett had the deed in his hand. She had possession, and when the sheriff arrived 20 minutes later, he sided with her. "This is a civil matter," the deputy muttered, barely glancing at Garrett's documents. "You'll have to take it to court." Garrett stood there, jaw tight, realizing he'd just been robbed, not by thieves in the night, but in broad daylight, with the law watching. What would you do if squatters claimed your house while holding a shotgun on your front porch? Garrett Hayes, 52, retired union electrician out of Pittsburgh. He'd spent 3 decades climbing icy poles and fixing transformers through blizzards that made the wires hum like frozen snakes. Every extra dollar from overtime went into savings, or, as he used to joke, the coffee can fund. 3 years ago, cancer took his wife, Helen, the kind that doesn't just steal life. It drains your wallet, your hope, and everything in between. Before she passed, her frail hand gripped his. "Go live your dream, baby," she'd whispered. "Don't just survive, live." So he tried to. His kids encouraged him. Emily, the social worker, sent him property listings every week. Travis, who ran a small construction crew, told him, "Find something to fix up, Dad. We'll help. You've earned it." Garrett found it during one of those sleepless 2 a.m. nights. A foreclosed A-frame cabin tucked deep into the West Virginia mountains, listed on a foreclosure auction site. The photos showed peeling wooden siding, a sagging roof, and a chimney that looked like it hadn't puffed smoke in decades. But beyond the decay, the view stretched into endless forest ridges. It looked like peace, $87,000 cash, bank-owned. Clear title, the listing promised. He even paid for a title search, clean. Not a single lien or claim. A remote home inspector checked the place. Foundation solid, roof patchable, electrical dated but intact. Everything looked perfect. The perfect retirement project. Garrett wired the money the next morning. Helen's life insurance covered part of it. 30 years of overtime covered the rest. He signed the papers digitally. Never even met a bank clerk. That's how things work now. The drive from Pittsburgh to the property took nearly 5 hours, winding through Appalachian switchbacks and narrow tree-shadowed valleys. He brought along his friend Des, 64, burly arms, the kind of guy who could frame a house blindfolded. They loaded Garrett's F-150 with tools, heavy-duty cleaning gear, and a case of Iron City beer for the new homeowner toast. The deeper they went into the mountains, the more the air smelled like pine and cold water. A creek somewhere below whispered against the rocks. Garrett cracked his window and took it all in. For the first time in years, he felt alive again. First time seeing it in person, right? Des asked, chewing beef jerky like it was tobacco. "Yeah," Garrett said, his palms slick against the steering wheel. The GPS led them up a narrow gravel road that rattled his fillings. And then around the final bend, there it was. The A-frame cabin from the photos, only it wasn't empty. 3 vehicles filled the driveway, a brand new Tahoe, a contractor's pickup with logos, and a Camry. Smoke curled from the chimney. Des frowned. Garrett?" he muttered, pointing. "Someone's here." Before Garrett could even park, the front door slammed open. Out stormed the woman, mid-50s, hair stiff as lacquer, makeup layered like spackle, yoga pants and rage radiating off her like heat. "This is private property," she shrieked. "You're trespassing." Garrett cut the engine, grabbed his folder with the deed, and stepped onto the gravel. The rocks cracked under his boots. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "there must be a mistake. I own this property." "That's fake," she barked, jabbing a finger toward his paperwork. "My great-uncle built this cabin. This is our family land. A man appeared behind her, burly, bearded, wearing a camo hoodie and Carhartt boots dusted in red clay. You got scammed, buddy, he said smugly. That auction was a fraud. We're reclaiming what's ours, Garrett's pulse roared in his ears. I have the deed. The title insurance. The county records. They're wrong, the woman hissed. We've been paying taxes for decades. The man whipped out his phone. I'm calling Sheriff Hooper. He'll settle this. Garrett glanced at the porch. Kids, scooters, propane grill, curtains, the smell of dinner. They weren't visiting. They'd moved in. Dez's voice dropped low. We need a lawyer, now! 20 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser rolled up, tires crunching gravel. The deputy, heavy-set, late 40s, mustache thick as a broom, stepped out like he was greeting old friends. He clasped hands with the man on the porch. Wade, appreciate you calling, the officer said. Garrett's heart sank. The sheriff barely skimmed Garrett's deed. Listened with the enthusiasm of someone forced to watch paint dry, and then said the words Garrett would never forget. This is a civil matter. Both of y'all think you own it. Courts'll have to sort it out. Till then, no one's getting evicted. The woman, Pamela Sutherland, as he'd soon learn, smiled sweetly. Possession's 9/10 of the law, sweetheart. The sheriff got back in his cruiser and drove away. Garrett stood there in disbelief, holding ironclad proof of ownership, watching strangers occupy his home, and the law simply walk off. He felt his knees go weak. Dez caught his shoulder. Man, what the hell just happened? Dez whispered. Garrett stared at the cabin, at the smoke rising from his chimney. I just got robbed, he said quietly, and the sheriff helped them do it. That night, they found a cheap roadside motel 10 miles down the highway, flickering neon vacancy sign, carpet that smelled like mildew and regret. Garrett couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., laptop open, he dove into West Virginia property law, reading case after case. Somewhere between anger and caffeine, he stumbled across something that made his blood run cold. Pamela Sutherland, the woman who'd screamed him off his porch, wasn't just anyone. She was the county's top real estate agent. Her face was plastered across sold signs all over local listings. She had known that property was in foreclosure. She would have seen the public notice in the county paper 18 months ago. She wasn't confused. She was strategic. Garrett remembered an old union rep once telling him about adverse possession, the legal loophole that lets squatters claim property if they live there long enough, openly and without dispute. In West Virginia, it took 10 years. Pamela couldn't possibly qualify. But she didn't need to. She just had to make things messy enough to stay there rent-free for years while the courts dragged on. 2 years, maybe 3, and she'd done this before. Garrett could feel it in his gut. He rubbed his eyes and whispered to himself, "This isn't just theft. It's a playbook." The next morning, an email arrived, a cease and desist letter from a Charleston law firm representing Pamela Sutherland. It accused him of harassment, claimed his purchase was a defective title, warned him to relinquish any claims or face a lawsuit, and, in bold letters, it noted that Randall Sutherland, Pamela's husband, was the county building inspector. The message between the lines was clear. Fight us, and we'll ruin you through official channels. Garrett closed his laptop, exhaled slow, and whispered, "All right, you picked the wrong guy." Garrett spent the morning pacing the motel room like a caged animal. The smell of mildew and burnt coffee clung to everything, the wallpaper peeling like old skin, the buzzing light flickering above him. He couldn't stop replaying the scene on the porch. The shotgun, the sheriff's shrug, the words civil matter, he had the deed. The insurance, every legal document that said the property was his. And somehow he was the one sleeping in a cheap motel while strangers were eating dinner in his kitchen. He didn't need sympathy. He needed strategy. So he found a name, Beverly Frost, a semi-retired attorney out of Charleston, rumored to be sharp, no-nonsense, and unafraid of local politics. He called her office that afternoon, explained his situation, and by evening, he was sitting across from her in a home office that looked like a cross between a library and a disaster zone. Stacks of legal binders leaned against coffee mugs filled with fossilized pens. But Beverly herself was sharp as glass. "Mr. Hayes," she said, peering over her glasses after skimming his paperwork, "you have ironclad ownership. The problem isn't the law, it's the people manipulating it." She leaned back, sighing. "Pamela's playing a long game. She knows this county, knows the judges, knows how to make outsiders give up." Garrett's jaw tightened. "So what do I do?" "We fight," Beverly said simply. "But you need to understand it'll be slow and expensive." She filed for an emergency eviction order that same day. Court date 6 weeks out. Rural courts moved at the speed of molasses. Before he left, Beverly added, "One more thing, Garrett. Randall Sutherland inspects half the construction in this county. He's got favors stacked up like firewood. Don't underestimate him." Garrett nodded, gripping his folder like a shield. "I'm not walking away." 3 days later, Garrett drove back up the mountain just to look. He parked far enough away to avoid another confrontation and stared through binoculars. Randall's construction crew was out back, pouring fresh concrete. An illegal addition being built right onto Garrett's property. The sound of drills and saws carried across the valley. "Men worked with confidence like they owned the place," Des muttered under his breath. "They're improving it, Garrett. You know what that means. They'll claim sweat equity." Garrett's stomach twisted. He pulled out his phone, filming every second. The hammering, the fresh cement, the license plates. Proof. He emailed the footage to Beverly that night. "They're bold," she replied. "That's unauthorized construction on disputed land. But if we file a stop work order now, we'll tip them off. Let them bury themselves deeper." Garrett stared at the screen, anger simmering. He'd spent his life fixing things. Electrical lines, houses, problems. But this was rot you couldn't fix with a wrench. A week later, the real hit landed. His bank called. The same bank that held his mortgage on 2 small rental properties back in Pittsburgh. "Mr. Hayes," the manager said carefully, "we've received an anonymous complaint alleging you used falsified documents to acquire a property in West Virginia. Until the matter's reviewed, we're freezing your line of credit. $30,000. Gone. Just like that." Garrett hung up the phone, heart pounding. He knew exactly who was behind it. Pamela and Randall were tightening the noose. He stared at his reflection in the motel's cracked mirror. The man looking back at him wasn't beaten, just furious. "They want me to break," he whispered. "They think I'll crawl away. Not a chance." Beverly had a plan, one that didn't involve waiting around. "Garrett," she said, tapping her pen against a stack of complaint forms, "we build a public record. Bureaucracy cuts both ways." She filed complaints everywhere that mattered. The State Real Estate Commission accusing Pamela of conflict of interest, trying to claim a home in her own sales territory. The County Ethics Board against Randall for using his position as building inspector in a personal property dispute. And finally, the State Attorney General's office demanding a fraud investigation. "Paper cuts," she explained. "One complaint won't do much. But 1,000? That's how you bleed a crook." Garrett grinned for the first time in days. "Let's make 'em bleed." Pamela struck back fast. 2 days later, Garrett's dormant business, Hayes Electrical Services, suddenly had a new 1-star Google review. Posted by Pamela S. It read, "Scammer. This man defrauded our family, stole our home, and used fake documents. Dangerous con artist. Avoid at all costs." Within hours, her post spread across local Facebook groups. Small-town loyalty was a weapon, and she wielded it like a blade. Garrett's phone began buzzing with messages from strangers. "Go back to Pittsburgh, city rat." Stealing from locals? Real brave. One text was worse. "Hope you crash on those mountain roads." Des saw the look in Garrett's eyes. "Don't let her get in your head, man." Garrett didn't answer. He was too busy tracing the numbers, noting the area codes, saving everything as evidence. They weren't going to scare him off. It happened by chance. Garrett was sitting in a diner one afternoon, waiting for Beverly's call, when a woman slid into the booth across from him. 60-something, gray hair tied in a bun, sharp eyes. "You're the guy fighting Pamela Sutherland, aren't you?" she said softly. Garrett blinked. "Who's asking?" "Leanne Pritchard. Used to be county clerk. Retired. I heard you talking to your lawyer, and I think you deserve to know what's really going on." She leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. Pamela's family never owned that property. Not once. Her great-uncle rented it back in the 80s. Got evicted in 87 for non-payment. She's been spinning this family legacy lie for years. Garrett's heartbeat quickened. Leanne continued. And she's done this before. 2 other times. Both buyers settled just to make her go away. Garrett sat back, stunned. "So it's a racket," Leanne nodded. "A business model. Squat, claim heritage, force a payout." She sipped her coffee, then added, "Come by the county archives tomorrow. I'll show you the paper trail." The next day, they descended into the basement of the county building. A dim, musty archive full of yellowed records and the smell of mold. Leanne guided him to a metal filing cabinet marked 1970s, 1980s. Deeds. Together, they unearthed it. The 1972 deed showing. The land sold to an out-of-state investor. No Sutherland anywhere. Then a lease agreement from 1983. Tenant, Henry Sutherland. Eviction notice. And 1987. Non-payment, black and white, indisputable. Leanne handed him copies, eyes shining. "Here's your ammo, Mr. Hayes." Garrett could barely speak. "Thank you," she smiled. "Go make them regret it." Garrett took the documents straight to Sheriff Hooper, expecting, maybe hoping, for a different response. The sheriff barely looked up from his desk. "This doesn't change anything," he said flatly. "Still a civil dispute. Courts decide." Garrett's voice tightened. "You're ignoring evidence because Randall's your friend." Hooper's expression hardened. "Watch your tone. I'm trying to keep peace in this county." Garrett stepped closer, lowering his voice. "No, you're trying to protect your buddies." The sheriff didn't respond. He didn't have to. His silence said enough. Garrett left, fists clenched so hard his nails bit into his palms. He'd come for justice. Instead, he'd found a wall of corruption, and he intended to tear it down. 2 days later, Randall himself showed up at the motel, not angry, not shouting, just smug. He leaned against Garrett's truck like it was his. "Let's be reasonable," he said. "I'll buy the property off you. 80 grand. Cash. You walk away clean." Garrett's jaw flexed. "I paid 87. Plus legal fees? Plus my time?" "Fine," Randall said. 75. Final offer. Otherwise, well, you'll find this county real hard to work in. Every inspection, every permit, red tape for miles." Garrett's eyes were ice. "Get off my property," Randall smirked, pushed himself off the truck and drove away, gravel spraying. Inside, Garrett poured himself a stiff whiskey, something he almost never did. His daughter Emily called minutes later. "Dad, Travis showed me the Facebook posts. This sounds dangerous. Maybe take the money?" Garrett looked at the glass in his hand, thought of Helen's voice. "I'm not selling," he said quietly. "Your mom wanted me to live my dream. I'm not letting crooks steal it." Emily was silent for a long moment. Then, softly, "She'd be proud of you." Garrett smiled faintly. "Yeah," he said. "She would." Beverly didn't waste time. She filed a motion to expedite, attaching photos of Randall's illegal construction, and demanded an injunction. The presiding judge, a visiting circuit judge, not one of Randall's drinking buddies, actually looked at the evidence. He granted partial relief. Construction halted immediately. No eviction yet. But a small victory. "Progress," Beverly said, tapping her pen. "We keep pressure on." Then she taught Garrett another legal weapon, lis pendens. It means lawsuit pending, she explained. You file it on the title so no one can sell or transfer the property while the case is active. Garrett filed it that same day, blocking Pamela from flipping his home to anyone else. This wasn't just defense anymore. It was offense. And for the first time in weeks, Garrett felt something dangerous growing inside him, hope. For a brief moment, Garrett thought the tide might finally be turning. The construction had stopped. The law, for once, had sided with reason, but Pamela Sutherland wasn't the type to lose quietly. 2 weeks later, she came back swinging, not with hammers or bulldozers, but with paperwork, A sheriff's deputy appeared at Garrett's motel door one evening with a folded document. "Mr. Hayes, you've been served." Inside, a temporary restraining order. Pamela claimed Garrett had stalked her, harassed her family, and made threatening gestures by driving past his own house. She accused him of sending menacing emails, of frightening her grandchildren. Every word was fabricated, but it didn't matter. The judge, likely one of Randall's poker buddies, granted it automatically. Now, Garrett was legally barred from coming within 500 feet of his own property. He stared at the paper, laughing bitterly. "They're trespassing in my house, and I'm the one banned from it." Dez slammed his beer down on the motel table. "They're twisting the system, man. Turning it into a weapon." Garrett nodded slowly. "Then we fight with evidence." The story hit the local paper a few days later. Out-of-state investor battles local family over historic mountain home. It was pure propaganda. The article painted Pamela as a small-town mother defending her generational land from a greedy outsider who'd swooped in to snatch up local heritage. Garrett was the villain. Now, a faceless corporate speculator. The comment section went nuclear. "Typical Yankee. Coming down here to steal what's ours. Hope he drives off a cliff." Locals should handle it themselves if the law won't. Garrett's phone lit up with hundreds of hateful messages. People calling him a thief. Some even threatening to teach him a lesson. He read every word, face blank. Then his son Travis called. "Dad, you're trending." On Twitter. "Not in a good way." "What now?" Garrett asked, half expecting it. "Pamela's crying on camera. Says you're trying to throw her grandkids out on the street. It's got 40,000 views." Garrett rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of exhaustion press down. "She's turning public opinion into her shield." "Dad," Travis said softly, "please, be careful." Garrett's answer came slow. "I'm not backing down, not now." Not ever. How the county frothed with gossip. Dez was busy doing what he did best, digging. He spent 2 days crawling through the public records database, pulling every construction permit, inspection record, and business filing he could find. What he uncovered nearly made Garrett drop his phone. "Buddy," Dez said over the line, voice low, "you're gonna want to see this. Randall's company, Sutherland Construction, got paid by the bank that foreclosed on your cabin. Paid for what? To secure and maintain the property before it went to auction. $8,500? Dez paused. "They were supposed to winterize it and keep it locked. But guess what? They moved in while it was still bank-owned, before you even bought it." Garrett's pulse quickened. "You're telling me they were squatting before the sale?" "Exactly. They were living there while the bank still owned it, then just stayed after you bought it." It was all starting to make sense. The confidence, the fake outrage, the insider connections. Dez's voice dropped lower. "What if it was a setup? Randall knows when properties are about to auction," tells Pamela. She moves in, claims it's family land, and waits for the buyer to either pay her off or drown in court. Garrett sat there in silence, the truth sinking in like cold water. It wasn't random. It was a business, a full-blown operation built on lies, intimidation, and bureaucracy. And he had the proof. Garrett took the new evidence straight to Beverly. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the screenshots and payment records. "Garrett," she said slowly, "this changes everything." She immediately filed an amended complaint, this time not just civil, but criminal. Fraud. Conspiracy. Theft by deception. "This isn't a property dispute anymore," she said. "This is organized corruption." The pressure worked faster than anyone expected. Within a week, Pamela's fancy Charleston law firm withdrew from her case, citing ethical conflicts. Randall was suspended from his county inspector position pending an ethics investigation, and suddenly, Sheriff Hooper, who'd been ignoring Garrett for months, was forced to act. The state attorney general's office sent investigators. For the first time, the Sutherlands weren't in control, but that didn't mean they'd given up. The night before Garrett's next court hearing, he stepped outside his motel to grab a coffee from the vending machine. Something glinted under the parking lot lights. All 4 tires of his truck slashed. Windows shattered. Spray paint across the hood in dripping red letters, "Leave." The smell of gasoline and paint stung his nostrils. The November air cut like knives as he stood there, fists shaking. When the sheriff arrived, it was Hooper himself, pretending to investigate. "Probably kids," he muttered, scribbling lazily on a notepad. Garrett's voice was ice. "You know damn well who did this?" Hooper didn't deny it, didn't confirm it either. Just met Garrett's glare with a blank stare. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Hooper turned away. Garrett realized the truth. Local law enforcement wasn't incompetent. It was corrupt, and he was standing in enemy territory. That night, Garrett sat on the edge of his motel bed, the ruined truck visible through the window. The phone rang. "Travis again. Dad, I can come down there. Bring the crew. We'll handle this together." Garrett's voice was low but steady. "No, son, not yet. I need you ready for when I call, because this isn't just about me anymore." He looked at Helen's photo glowing softly on his phone screen. Her words echoed like a heartbeat. "Go live your dream, baby. Don't just exist." He straightened his shoulders. "All right," he whispered. "I'm done reacting. It's time to strike." 3 days later, Beverly's paralegal called. They'd found something in the county archives, buried deep in a drawer mislabeled from 2009. A tax lien certificate. Pamela's great-uncle had once owned a small adjoining parcel of land, 3 acres of hillside, not the cabin itself. He'd lost it 16 years ago due to unpaid property taxes. Beverly spread the documents across her desk like a deck of aces. "Here's what happened," she explained. "Pamela's family did own land here, but not your land. They've been conflating 2 properties for decades. Either she's delusional or a brilliant liar." Garrett leaned forward. "Can we prove it?" "I already hired a surveyor," Beverly said. "He's going up there tomorrow." 3 days later, the results came back. GPS mapping, historical plats, satellite overlays. The surveyor's conclusion was definitive. The A-frame cabin and 37 acres around it were Garrett Hayes's property, the Sutherland's so-called ancestral land. A 3-acre patch of steep woodland sold to an investment firm in 2009, Pamela's entire story bests the family. Land, the heritage cabin, the sobbing Facebook videos, was built on dirt that wasn't even theirs. Beverly filed an emergency motion with the court, attaching the survey and records. The courtroom was packed. Pamela sat at the defense table, hands clasped like a saint. Randall beside her with his jaw locked tight. The judge, the same visiting circuit judge as before, adjusted his glasses and reviewed the evidence in silence. "Counsel," he said finally, "your clients have no legal claim. The deeds, the surveys, and the records are definitive. There's no reason this case should continue." Pamela's new attorney, a frazzled public defender clearly in over his head, tried to stall. "Your Honor, my clients need additional time to—" "Denied," the judge snapped. "Eviction order granted. Sheriff's Department to enforce within 48 hours. Pamela's composure shattered. She stood, screaming through tears. "This is our land. My family built that house. You're all corrupt." Her voice echoed down the courthouse hallway as deputies escorted her out. Garrett exhaled, the tension leaving his shoulders like a collapsing wall. Beverly smiled for the first time in weeks. "We did it," she said quietly. "It's finally yours." Garrett didn't smile back. He just stared out the courthouse window at the gray sky, whispering, "It's not over. Not yet." 2 hours later, the phone rang. It was the fire marshal's office. "Mr. Hayes," the voice said, "we received an anonymous report of hazardous materials being stored at your property. We're required to inspect before the eviction proceeds." Garrett's gut twisted. "How long will that take?" "Could be a few days. Could be a week. Depends on what we find." He hung up, knuckles white around the phone. Beverly's tone over the line was grim. "They're not trying to win anymore. They're trying to stall. And if we're not careful, they'll plant something to make it look real." Garrett stared out at the dark road beyond the motel window, his reflection hard in the glass. "No more surprises," he said quietly. "Next time we bring the whole damn truth." Garrett could feel it. This was the final move in a long, ugly game. The court had ruled in his favor, but Pamela and Randall weren't surrendering. They weren't just fighting to keep the house. They were fighting to avoid exposure. And now, with a fire hazard inspection conveniently appearing 48 hours before eviction, Beverly knew exactly what they were doing. "They're trying to plant something," she warned over the phone. "Probably old fuel, paint, or chemicals. If the inspector finds anything dangerous, they can freeze the eviction for weeks." Garrett exhaled slowly. "Then we'll meet them head on. This time, no shadows, no backroom deals. Everyone's going to see what's really happening." He made 3 calls that night, one to Des, one to his son Travis, and one to a journalist. Des answered first. "Tell me where and when," he said simply. 2 days. 6 a.m., Garrett replied. "Bring your camera gear. We document everything, start to finish." Next, Travis. "I'm loading up the crew," he said. 5 guys, all union. We'll be there before sunrise." And finally, the most important call, to Mara Chen. Investigative reporter for the Charleston Gazette-Mail, Mara was infamous for tearing open small-town corruption with calm precision. When Garrett introduced himself, she interrupted. "You're the Garrett Hayes? I've been following your case." He didn't even have to ask. "When can we talk?" she said. 2 days, he replied. "Be on the mountain by 5:30. You'll want front-row seats." The night before the inspection, Des drove up to the edge of Garrett's property, just outside the 500-foot restraining order boundary. He launched a drone into the cold air, its hum blending with the wind. The camera swept over the cabin, new shingles glinting in the moonlight. Freshly painted siding, even a landscaped walkway. "They're improving the place again," Des muttered into his mic. "You know what that means. They'll try to claim you owe them for it." Beverly was already 2 steps ahead. "We'll file a countersuit for property restoration costs. Their improvements are illegal. If they want to play that card, we'll burn the whole deck." By midnight, Garrett's allies were in position. Travis's crew installed motion-triggered trail cameras along the driveway and tree line. Mara prepared her equipment, camera, microphone, body recorder, and Garrett, sitting in the motel parking lot, stared at the clock. 2 more days, he told himself. 2 more days and this nightmare ends. Beverly explained the Sutherlands' latest tactic over lukewarm coffee. "False safety complaints are a classic delay strategy," she said. "Someone calls in an anonymous tip. Gas leaks, asbestos, explosives. Doesn't matter if it's true. The county has to investigate," Garrett smirked. "And when they don't find anything, then the eviction goes forward," she said. "But if they do find something, even if the Sutherlands planted it," she didn't need to finish. That night, she drafted an official request for an independent inspection witness, naming Mara Chen as press observer. If the Sutherlands tried anything dirty, it would be caught on camera and broadcast statewide. The morning of the inspection came cold and thick with fog, mountain mist curling low across the ground. Garrett's truck rolled up the gravel road at dawn, followed by Beverly's sedan and Mara's SUV. At 5:30 sharp, Mara and her photographer stepped out, cameras already clicking. Garrett's boots crunched on frost as he looked at the cabin, wood smoke drifting lazily from the chimney. The Sutherlands were awake, waiting. Randall stood on the porch, arms crossed, wearing the same camouflage jacket as always. Pamela hovered behind him, pale and tight-lipped. Beverly leaned over to Garrett. "Remember, say nothing. Let the inspector talk first." At 6 cows a.m. on the dot, the fire marshal's truck pulled up. State official, not county. A good sign. He was a tall man with calm eyes, clipboard in hand. "Morning," he said evenly. "Got a report of hazardous materials on site." Randall stepped forward immediately, blocking the doorway. "There's nothing dangerous here." "Somebody filed a false complaint." The marshal didn't blink. "Then you won't mind if I look. You got a warrant for that?" Randall snapped. "For emergency inspections under public safety law?" The marshal's voice was cool. "No, sir. Step aside or I'll call state police." Randall hesitated. His jaw clenched, then he moved. The marshal went inside. Garrett and Mara stayed outside, documenting everything. The air was tense enough to hum. Every minute dragged like an hour. After 20 minutes, the fire marshal emerged, his expression unreadable. He carried photos on his phone, his voice measured but hard. "Found 5 55-gallon drums in the basement," he said, unlabeled. "Could be diesel. Could be worse." Pamela gasped theatrically. "See? He planted those." Garrett's voice was steady but loud enough for Mara's recorder. "I've never been inside that house. I couldn't plant a thing." The marshal crouched by one of the barrels, inspecting the scraped-off serial numbers. He ran a search right there on his tablet. The results came up. Instantly, "These drums are registered to Sutherland Construction, LLC. They were reported as disposed of 6 months ago." Randall's face went white. "That's impossible. Someone must have—" The marshal cut him off. "They're filled with used motor oil. Illegal storage. Environmental hazard. False report, too." He pulled out a red sticker and slapped it across the door. "Property's officially red-tagged," he said. "No one occupies until cleanup is done." Pamela exploded. "This is a setup!" she shrieked, pointing at Garrett. "He's framing us! You don't understand! He's dangerous!" Mara stepped forward, camera rolling. "Ma'am, the drums are registered to your husband's company. Care to explain that?" Pamela's face twisted. Then she lunged at the camera. Hands out like claws. The state troopers, already on scene for eviction backup, caught her mid-charge. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for assault and resisting," one said. Pinning her wrists, Pamela screamed as they hauled her toward the cruiser. "You're all corrupt." "You'll see. He's stealing my family's land." Her voice echoed off the mountain as every second was captured on film. Randall stood frozen on the porch, eyes hollow. His daughter, Crystal, huddled near the door, clutching her kids. For the first time, he looked defeated. "Please," he said quietly. "Just give us a few hours." "The kids' things are still inside." Garrett looked at Beverly. She gave a small nod. "Your call," she whispered. Garrett sighed. 2 hours, he said. "Only personal belongings. Nothing else." Randall's eyes filled with something almost human. Gratitude, maybe. But then Crystal snapped. She stormed back inside, grabbing a baseball bat from beside the door. Des shouted, "Garrett!" as she started swinging, smashing windows, mirrors. Furniture. Spray paint hissed through the air. Red letters across the living room wall. "Thief, liar, burn in hell." Troopers rushed in, dragging her out, kicking and screaming while her children and Garrett Hayes, the man who'd been called a thief, a crook, an outsider, was about to become something else entirely. A symbol. The weeks after the arrests felt like a fever breaking. Randall was facing federal charges. Pamela's reputation was in ashes. The cabin was gutted, cleaned, and slowly being rebuilt. But peace didn't come. Not really. Garrett was still drowning in debt, legal fees, cleanup costs, repairs. He'd spent $45,000 on top of the original purchase. Some nights he sat on the new porch frame with a beer, staring at the mountains and wondering if he'd won anything at all. That was when Des dropped by with a grim look. "You need to see this," he said, sliding his phone across the workbench. It was a screenshot, a social media post. "Randall Sutherland has filed a mechanic's lien for $30,000, the claim. Payment for improvements and maintenance during occupancy." Garrett almost laughed. "He destroyed my house, and now he wants me to pay him for it?" Beverly wasn't surprised. Standard move. A mechanic's lien can cloud your title for months. But here's the catch. The work must be authorized. His wasn't. It's fraudulent. She filed a motion to dismiss within the hour. While the courts handled that mess, Dez's crew worked overtime to repair the cabin. Word spread around town, and something unexpected began to happen. People started showing up. The lumberyard owner, who Randall owed $6,000, donated materials. Local electricians heard Garrett was one of their own and volunteered weekend labor. Church groups dropped off casseroles, cornbread, even pies. The same community that had once branded him an outsider was slowly, quietly making amends. Garrett didn't talk much, but every gesture hit him deep. He wasn't alone anymore. Randall, however, wasn't done. With charges piling up and public sympathy gone, he decided to go nuclear. Des found out first. "You're trending again," he said grimly. Randall had contacted a local militia group, the kind with tactical gear, camo flags, and a flair for dramatics. He told them Garrett was part of a government-backed land grab, that outsiders were stealing heritage property from real Americans. The militia posted videos online. Local family under attack by corrupt officials. Stand for freedom! Within days, trucks started arriving, 30 of them. Men in camo stood on the road outside Garrett's cabin, rifles slung over their shoulders, flags snapping in the wind. Signs read, "Local land for local people. Outsiders go home." State police couldn't do much. The protest was technically legal. Public road, open carry, state First Amendment rights. But the message was clear. Intimidation. Garrett and his crew were trapped inside the half-finished cabin. Every hammer strike echoed like a dare. News vans lined the nearby road. Cameras rolled. The situation spiraled from local scandal to national spectacle. CNN ran one version of the story. Fox ran the opposite. Talk shows debated whether Garrett was a victim or a villain. He told Mara Chen during an interview, exhaustion etched into his face. "I just wanted to fix up a house. I didn't come here to start a war." But it was too late. The war had come to him. 2 mornings later, the sound of diesel engines cut through the mountain air. 50 pickup trucks rolled up. But these weren't militia. They were veterans. Men and women in worn jeans and old service jackets stepped out. Disciplined, organized, silent. Their leader, a retired sergeant major with gray at his temples, spoke to the cameras first. "We're not here to fight," he said calmly. "We're here to stand between bullies and the man. They're trying to destroy." They formed a human wall between Garrett's property and the armed protesters. "This man followed the law," the sergeant major declared. "These yahoos don't represent us or this community." The standoff lasted 3 tense hours. The militia, outnumbered and humiliated, eventually packed up and left. They swore they'd be back. They never returned. That night, Garrett sat by the newly framed porch with the sergeant major beside him. "Why'd you come?" Garrett asked quietly. The older man shrugged. "Because what's happening to you is wrong. And we're tired of bullies winning." Garrett stared at the mountain ridge glowing orange in the sunset. "You guys saved me." The veteran smiled faintly. "Nah, you saved yourself. We just made sure everyone saw it." The next morning, the FBI made its final move. Randall was arrested for cybercrime. The deepfake audio meant to frame Garrett. Combined with the other charges, fraud, theft, environmental violations, he was staring down a decade in federal prison. The cameras were waiting as they let him out in cuffs. When reporters shouted questions, Randall cracked. "It was Pam's idea," he yelled. "She said we could take it. Said the law wouldn't touch us." He threw his wife under the bus in one desperate attempt to save himself. Pamela's real estate license was revoked permanently. Her house foreclosed. Her savings gone to legal fees. Her daughter, Crystal, the one who'd vandalized the cabin, pled guilty and received probation. She disowned her mother publicly, writing, "My family hurt innocent people. I won't be part of it anymore." Pamela was left alone, broke, disgraced, and publicly hated. Winter crept over the mountains. Snow dusted the trees like salt. Garrett, Travis, and Dez worked through the cold, rebuilding the cabin board by board. The smell of fresh-cut pine filled the air. Sawdust clung to their clothes. Neighbors dropped off food, tools, even furniture. One evening, Travis sat beside his father, both staring at the glowing horizon. "Was it worth it, Dad?" he asked quietly. Garrett rubbed the calluses on his palms. "Ask me when it's finished." They sat in silence as the sun disappeared behind the ridge, the wind whispering through the pines like a sigh of relief. 3 months later, the cabin was done. Not just repaired, transformed. Garrett decided to celebrate the only way that felt right. He invited everyone, locals, supporters, even skeptics. An open house and barbecue on the mountain. He wanted them to see with their own eyes what he'd fought for, and what they'd almost destroyed. 200 people showed up. Smokers hissed on the lawn. The porch was strung with lights. Bluegrass music played while kids chased each other through the grass. Garrett stood at the front steps, microphone in hand. "Mara's camera streaming live. I didn't come here to steal anything," he said, voice steady. "I came to build something. And despite everything, I still want to be part of this community." Applause rippled through the crowd. Quiet at first, then louder, and then a car screeched into the driveway. Pamela, uninvited, unhinged, she stumbled out of the car. Mascara streaking, slurring words through vodka breath. "Liar! Thief!" she screamed, pointing at Garrett. "This is my family's land!" Every phone in the crowd went up, hundreds of lenses capturing every second. The veterans, now acting as informal security, stepped between her and the porch. "Ma'am, you need to calm down." She didn't. She shoved, screamed, clawed. Garrett raised his microphone, his tone calm. "Pamela, I'm sorry for what you lost. But you didn't lose it to me. You lost it to your own choices." He gestured toward a poster board Des had prepared, a timeline of the Sutherland family's lies projected on a screen. 2. Property sold. No Sutherlands. 1983. Her great-uncle rented it. 1987. Eviction for non-payment. 2009. Different parcel, lost to tax sale. 2024. Pamela and Randall squat on a legally purchased home, the crowd murmured. The lie unraveled in real time. Pamela's knees buckled. She dropped into the gravel sobbing. "I just wanted my kids to have something," she choked. "We had nothing." Garrett stepped closer, lowering the mic. "Then you should have asked for help, not stolen it." He offered his hand. She slapped it away. Deputies gently escorted her to her car. The crowd watched in silence. No one cheered. No one jeered. It was over. After Pamela left, something remarkable happened. Randall's former business partner, Carlos, stepped forward. His hands trembled as he took the microphone. 3 years ago, Randall stole $15,000 from me. I stayed quiet because he had power. Watching Garrett fight gave me courage to sue, and I won last week. More people came forward, a plumber, a roofer, a widow. Each had a story of being cheated, intimidated, or silenced by the Sutherlands. Then, a woman from the crowd stepped up. Sharp suit, badge on her belt. "State Attorney General's office," she said. "Mr. Hayes's case helped uncover systemic corruption in this county. Randall Sutherland was involved in 9 other property irregularities. We'll be prosecuting them all." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mara's camera panned to Garrett's face as the reporter asked, "How does it feel to know your fight exposed all this?" Garrett's voice cracked just slightly. "Like maybe it was worth it." The crowd erupted in applause. Louder, freer, genuine. Sheriff Hooper approached afterward, hat in hand. His face was pale, contrite. "Mr. Hayes," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. I let friendship cloud my judgment. It won't happen again." Garrett met his eyes. "Just do your job fairly. That's all anyone ever wanted." They shook hands, cameras flashing. Garrett wasn't just a homeowner anymore. He'd become a symbol of justice, a reminder that persistence could tear down corruption one nail at a time, and the mountain, silent and endless, seemed to approve. The morning after the open house felt different, quiet, clean, as though the mountain itself had exhaled after years of holding its breath. Garrett stepped onto the porch, coffee steaming in his hands, the cold air brushing his face. For the first time in almost a year, there were no lawyers calling, no threats waiting, no court dates looming, just the hum of the forest and the soft creak of new wood beneath his boots. The story had gone viral. Every major network covered it. The man who took his home back. News anchors debated his case, podcasts broke down the corruption ring, and late-night hosts cracked jokes about Karen's illegal mountain vacation. But beneath the humor, people were paying attention. Thousands reached out, veterans, homeowners, farmers, single parents, all sharing similar nightmares, squatters, corrupt officials, stolen property, endless red tape. Garrett's inbox overflowed with letters that began the same way. "I thought I was alone until I saw your story." He spent nights replying to them one by one. It wasn't fame he wanted, it was connection. For so long, the system had made him feel powerless. Now people saw him as proof that power could be reclaimed. It started small, a conversation with Beverly over coffee. "You know," she said, tapping her pen, "if we organized a network of property rights attorneys, local journalists, and veterans willing to help, we could protect others from this." Garrett nodded slowly. "Like a safety net?" "Exactly," Beverly said. "Call it whatever you want, but make it official." Within weeks, they filed the paperwork for a nonprofit, the Mountain Foundation for Property Justice. Its mission was simple: help ordinary people fight extraordinary injustice. Free legal aid, investigative support, and emergency housing for victims of squatting or property fraud. Dez built the website himself. Mara produced a documentary segment to promote it. Travis handled logistics and outreach. Within 3 months, the foundation had 100 volunteers across 4 states. Garrett hadn't just won his home back. He'd built something far greater. One crisp afternoon in early spring, Garrett decided to hike up the ridge behind his cabin, the same trail he'd first taken when he bought the place. Back before everything went to hell, the ground was thawing, the air heavy with pine and thawed soil. Halfway up, he stopped at the overlook, the spot where he used to imagine his future. Now the cabin below gleamed in the distance, restored, whole, alive. He smiled softly. "I did it, Helen," he whispered. He pulled the small silver locket from his pocket, the one that had belonged to his late wife, and held it in the sunlight. "Guess I finally finished the project you started." He tucked the locket under a smooth rock at the overlook, his private memorial. "Rest easy, love," he said quietly. "The mountain's ours again." 2 weeks later, a visitor arrived unannounced. A beat-up SUV rolled into the driveway, dust swirling behind it. A young woman stepped out, dark hair, tired eyes, holding 2 small kids by the hand. It was Crystal, Pamela's daughter. Garrett froze, unsure what to say. She spoke first. "I wanted to apologize," she said softly. "For everything. For what my mom did. For what I did." She glanced at the children. "They don't remember much, thank God, but I don't want them growing up thinking lying gets you anywhere." Garrett nodded, his expression unreadable. "Where's your mother now?" he asked quietly. Crystal's voice trembled. "In rehab. After the charges and losing the house, she didn't take it well." Garrett sighed, the anger inside him fading to pity. "I'm sorry to hear that," Crystal hesitated. "I know I don't deserve to ask for anything, but my mom said something before she went in. She told me to tell you she's sorry. Said you were right. She should have asked for help instead of stealing it." For a long moment, Garrett said nothing. Then he stepped forward and extended his hand. "Tell her I forgive her," he said, "and tell her this mountain doesn't hold grudges. It just waits for people to grow up." Crystal nodded, tears in her eyes, and drove away. By summer, the Mountain Foundation had gone national. News outlets covered its success stories. A widowed teacher in Oregon regained her farm from fraudulent tenants. A disabled veteran in Kentucky reclaimed his family home. An elderly couple in Colorado exposed a county clerk running a property scam. Each story echoed Garrett's. Ordinary people pushed to the edge, clawing their way back through truth and grit. At a press event in Charleston, Garrett stood behind a podium under a banner that read, "One home, one fight, one victory at a time." Cameras flashed. Reporters crowded forward. "Mr. Hayes," one shouted, "what's next for you? After everything you've been through, do you finally feel at peace?" Garrett smiled faintly. "Peace isn't something you find, it's something you build, nail by nail, brick by brick." The room went silent, then erupted in applause. Months later, a letter arrived. No return address, just a single word on the envelope. Pamela. Inside was a handwritten note. "Mr. Hayes, I watched the news about your foundation. I saw how many people you've helped. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to say thank you. You were right. I should have asked for help. I lost everything trying to protect something that was never mine to begin with. I hope one day The world remembers me for something other than my mistakes. Pamela Sutherland. Garrett read it twice, then set it on the mantel. He didn't frame it. He didn't throw it away either. He just left it there. A quiet reminder that even the worst people could change, if only a little. That evening, the mountain air shimmered with fireflies. Des and Travis sat on the porch, guitars in hand, playing slow, easy music. Garrett leaned back in his chair, sipping whiskey, watching the stars come out one by one. "Hard to believe, huh?" Des said softly. "All that chaos started with one broken lock," Garrett chuckled, "and ended with a brand new life." They fell into a comfortable silence. The cabin glowed warm from the inside, rebuilt walls, new furniture, family photos, the faint scent of cedar and coffee. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was a story, written in scars, rebuilt with hope. Garrett stood looking out over the dark tree line. The wind swept through the pines, carrying faint echoes of laughter from the valley below. He smiled to himself. The mountain was no longer haunted. It had forgiven him, and maybe, in its quiet way, thanked him. A year later, the Mountain Foundation reached its 1,000th case. Mara's documentary, The Man Who Fought the Mountain, premiered at film festivals across the country, winning awards for investigative journalism. Garrett hated the spotlight, but he attended one screening, sitting quietly in the back row while strangers wiped tears watching his story unfold. When the credits rolled, the audience stood and clapped. Beverly leaned over and whispered, "You realize you've become the thing you were fighting for, the honest face of justice." Garrett smiled. "I just fixed what was broken," she shook her head. "No, Garrett, you rebuilt the whole damn mountain." Back home, the morning mist rolled across the ridge just like it had on the day he first arrived, only this time it felt like an old friend. He walked down to the edge of the creek, the water glinting under the sunrise. He placed his hand on the cool stone of the bridge, his bridge now, and whispered, "We made it." The mountain didn't answer, but it didn't need to, because in its silence, Garrett Hayes finally heard everything he'd been fighting for all along: peace, belonging, and the quiet strength of a man who refused to be erased. The camera of the imagination panned back. The cabin, the trees, the rebuilt bridge, the rising sun, all shining together in stillness. The story was done. The man had won, and the mountain finally rested.